You're welcome back. Now, the report of the Auditor General on special audits carried out on selected state institutions in the year 2018 made a shocking revelation that the Electoral Commission has sold the data of voters to a private company for money. The private company, Buy System Limited, subsequently sold the electoral data to financial service providers for a fee. Now, the report said this in addition to other things. This revelation by the Auditor General raises concern about possible breaches of the privacy of Ghanaians who gave their data to the EC. Today we're going to talk about that. Roxanne Nelson Dafiamekwe will be joining us in the studio. He's the Honourable Member of Parliament for South Day. He's also a member of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee, as well as the Judiciary Committee. We'll first start to get an understanding of what has happened with Maximus Ametogo, who, in addition to being a technology consultant, also knows a thing or two about data protection. He joins us via Skype now. Maximus, good morning to you.
Good morning. Could you?
All right. Now I see you're you're enjoying the difficulties of traffic this morning, but I'm hoping you have a bit of time to talk us through this rather bizarre revelation here. So the EC has sold our data. Does the law allow them to do this?
I'm not sure there's any law that gives them the right to even give any third-party access to our database. Right? Is that outright? And even the Ghana Data Commission Protection Act, right? If you're a data controller, you are supposed to tell the data subjects. Here, as in the with regards to the EC, is the voters. You're going to tell us what exactly you are going to use our data for. And if you collect our data, you are not going to, go beyond the primary or secondary, agreed usage of the data. To hear that our Electoral Commission has given our data, to a third party who is also selling it to financial institutions to verify our voters' ID or whatever, it's against the law. And really, it's quite sad to even hear that they even sign an agreement and they can't even find any agreement. And I think the company name is even Buy Systems. It's not Buy Systems as indicated in the report.
What do we know about this company?
Yeah, they have various verification, platforms. So they built what they call an API that can connect, their system to another system to verify or authenticate the data. So if you presented your voter's ID at a bank or any financial institution, they can cross-check that Maximus's name and the number and the face and the various associated data belongs to the same person, right? So that's what happens. But the law does not give the Electoral Commission that right to give a backdoor access to our database to a third party for a financial gain. Right. It's not done.
Now, what you're describing is basically a verification process that banks around the world all need to do in order to assess customers for all kinds of banking facilities and reduce non-performing loans and so forth that arise out of inability to track those who borrow. So since this is a legitimate need for the data, is it wrong for the Electoral Commission's data to be the source from which this information is derived? Would that be irregular? Does that not happen in other countries? In the UK, for example, don't they the fact that you are on the voters register counts towards your credit rating? So is that different from what is happening here in Ghana?
Yeah, you see, the European Union, they have a very strict rule. So they have this general data protection regulation, which even states that you, the person collecting the person's my data, you are supposed to tell me why you are collecting the data, what you are going to use the data for, and the processes, the third party or the people who will have access to my data, whether to authenticate my identity or whatever, you are supposed to even inform me before I give you the outright permission. And in the end, I can also restrict your access to that. So I can tell you, okay, even though I gave you permission to give my data to A, B, C, D, I don't want it any longer. And I can even ask for erasure of my data from your system. That is what their law clearly states. And our data protection law also, speaks to the same, the same angle, that if you're collecting my data, you're supposed to tell me what you're going to use my data for, and you're not supposed to go beyond that. So if you go beyond that, you are breaching my privacy. I'm not sure the Electoral Commission in the UK or the Federal Commission in charge of elections in the US will go and sell your the citizens' data to authenticate them. It's not done. It's that simple.
Wow. Right. Well, stay with us. I want to come into the studio now and say good morning to our other guest, who is Roxanne Nelson Dafiamako, Member of Parliament for South. It's how nice to see you. Thank you so much for making the time. But what a bizarre revelation. We're trying to understand, the legal implications here, whether there are any. Because Maximus raises the data protection concern. Now, the Data Protection Act is quite clear on which institutions have the power to collect and store data, and how that data is to be managed and shared if necessary. And it says quite clearly, we read this here yesterday on the show, that it is the person...
Not if necessary, lawfully.
Lawfully, thank you. So we said quite clearly that it is the person who has submitted his data, whose permission is required before you can share their data. And you cannot do so without informing them. Now, I don't know about you, who I'm sure are a registered voter, but when you registered to vote, was that discussion had with you about the fact that your data will be passed on to third parties and financial institutions?
Not at all. But you see, the difficulty is that, let me seize the opportunity to say good morning, customary to my constituent, Peki Kpali Peve Tongo. The difficulty we have is that we have a legal arrangement that permits the collectors of data to, as it were, allow other third parties to have access to the data for a lawful purpose. So the Electoral Commission, it is revealed that the Electoral Commission had contracted another company to, as it were, use for lawful purposes data that is in its possession for purposes of electronic verification of our voters' ID card. Now, that venture is to achieve a legal end, and that is that where somebody attempts or succeeds in crafting a fake ID card, you can't tell. The way the voter's ID card is, you can never tell if it's a fake or not. You need an electronic means of verifying. So it is that means that is available to the financial institutions. Otherwise, you and I, we can just walk into any bank with anything and get away with. So it allows the bank to also conduct, as part of their know your customer, KYC, right? KYC, to know your customer checklist, to be able to tell that when Kojo Yancey says, this is Kojo Yancey on this card, it is truly Kojo Yancey, electronically established, that you exist in our database as a registered voter. So it is those electronic means that we can use to do this. Now, what is worrying is that where these two entities have lawfully contracted, the processes that are supposed to be available to the Electoral Commission
have not been
Now,
remitted. We will talk about that, so the sort of the audit side of things first, but I want us to complete the data protection issue. And you've raised an important point here, that your interpretation is that this use of data by the banks is a lawful purpose.
Yes.
But it occurs to me that these banks are private institutions.
Yes, I agree.
So in order for them to get access to me, a member of the public,
Performing a public service.
Yes, but they're still private institutions,
yeah.
you know, profit-making
Yes.
organizations, even where government is a shareholder. It is still a private institution.
I agree.
So in order for them to get access to my data, there must be some provision of permission. So did that happen? Was there at any point provision of that permission
now
to them?
it will be absurd if the intention of the framers of the law is for each voter to grant an express consent to Electoral Commission for purposes of a third-party use of our data.
At the point of registry, perhaps.
I agree.
It should be part of the terms and conditions.
I agree. But when you are going through the registration process, as our 18-year-olds are doing now, I don't think they are told they need such process.
Is that not a problem?
What the law requires is that the law requires the Electoral Commission to put stringent electronic measures in place so that our data is not exposed to unlawful use. That's all.
But here we are looking at it, the data being shared with a third party.
Under a contract.
Yes.
Under a contract.
But
I am here to see the contract. You see, the difficulty I have is I am here to see the contract.
It's an MOU.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it may not even be binding. That's the difficulty. You cannot be permitting B systems to have access to our data for purposes of relating those data to financial institutions to achieving a legitimate business end without contracting properly. An MOU is simply an MOU. It is simply that.
Yeah.
It's a memorandum of understanding. That understanding can change tomorrow. It is not binding.
But
that is my worry.
I get you. But my question still is that are we not making a leap, a certain assumption, that because there are two legal entities on either side of this deal here, B systems representing the financial institutions that ultimately use the data, and the EC, two legal entities. They've come into...
B system doesn't represent the financial institutions. That is also its core business.
I'm with you.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that in this arrangement, where my data ends up with the financial institutions, they go between...
Through a third party.
That's right. That's right. So the third party there is the B systems. So this deal is between B systems and the EC. They are legal entities, yes. The financial institutions on the other side, who are the users of the data, the end users of the data, are also legal entities. But what does the law say about the sharing of my data with a third party, be it a legal entity or not? What does the law say about the process that must happen before that data can be shared? Have we fulfilled that aspect of the law?
You are referring... I've read the report overnight, but the report doesn't even mention the expiration date of the contract. And I'm surprised because you see, they mention an agreement.
An MOU, yeah.
They mention an agreement. And so any contract is a form of agreement. But I'm hearing that it is an MOU. If it is an MOU, it is not binding legally.
In the management response to the audit, that is what the EC said, that it is an MOU. A memorandum of understanding. This is what the Finder newspaper. Can we get that, please? If our producers can get us yesterday's Finder newspaper, I'll be able to quote directly from the audit report.
Then we have a problem.
Yeah, in fact, I'll tell you what. I'll quote directly from the audit report. I have the report here on my phone. I think that will give us the perspective we need for the discussion. But you see, so I guess we're still coming back to the issue of what does the law say must happen before my data is given to a third party, whether there is a legal agreement between you and them or not. Here, I'm quoting from the... right, here we are. So, paragraph 671 of the report. We noted during our audit that B System Limited entered into an agreement with management to have access to electoral data for the company to subsequently provide the electoral data to the financial service providers for a fee. B System Limited was to pay 20% of the fees collected on quarterly basis to the Commission. Management could, however, not provide the service level agreement, that's the first problem, service level agreement between the Electoral Commission and B System Limited for our review. We further noted that B System failed to remit the 20% commission due the Electoral Commission for the 2016 and 17 financial years. 672. Actually, no, let me jump to 6, where they talk about the Memorandum of Understanding. In response, this is paragraph 674. In response of the report, thank you. In response, management stated that, and there are quotation marks here, there exists a Memorandum of Understanding signed between the Commission and B System. The Commission suspended the MOU in the third quarter of 2016. However, prior to this suspension, the vendor had made a payment for first and second quarter in 2016. Going forward, we will review the existing service agreement in line with public procurement law. Quote closed. Okay, and you can see that on your screen, paragraph 674. Okay, and it says quite clearly there exists a Memorandum of Understanding which, according to the EC, they suspended, or yes, suspension, that's what the word they use. They suspended this MOU in the third quarter of 2016.
Yeah.
So in effect, today, the information that banks are getting about us every time we go to open an account, the information that they are accessing through this agreement.
There's no legal basis.
Well, yeah.
No. You see, it is not the banks that have access to the data. What is happening is that B Systems is hosting the data. All right? Now, the banks are giving electronic means of verifying forms of identification.
Right.
And in this case, the voter's ID card. So they do not have access to interfere with any of the content as contained in the data. It is only an electronic means. All right? It's as if if you don't block my line, I have the ability to make a phone call to your line. But if you block me, I am unable to.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that I am in possession of your phone.
Okay.
That's the kind of arrangement we have.
All right. So
okay.
I guess what you're saying, just for the understanding of our audience, is that if you take your voter's ID card to the bank, they can, for example, I'm using an example.
And my bank is Barclays Bank. So well. If I go and I give it to them,
they can, for example, swipe your voter's ID card.
They have a machine.
Very good.
For that purpose.
Okay.
Yes.
So they would say swipe it.
Exactly.
The machine would take a certain information from your card, send it to B Systems
and electronic signal.
That's right. And say, is this valid? B Systems then has access and can check.
B System has an IT infrastructure. So when that card is swiped from any of Barclays branch, they are networked. The electronic signal is sent to B System, and then it runs. So once it runs and it's okay, they get a feedback.
Yes, it is valid.
Exactly.
So the bank will never see the voter's ID.
No.
It will simply get a yes or no response to swiping your card.
And they even go ahead to make a photocopy of that.
Very well.
Okay.
Still,
yes,
B Systems is accessing my private information, and the question is, do they have the legal right to do so, or are they breaching the Data Protection Act?
As we speak, they do not.
Right.
Because the Electoral Commission is saying we have suspended the MOU, and if you read the further comments from the Auditor General, he says that they have reviewed the MOU, and it does not constitute a service level agreement.
Which brings in the money issue, which is what we're talking about next. But just to close on the data protection issue, Maximus, if you're still with us, you've heard the explanation being given by Mr. Tafe-Amakpo. From the legal perspective, he is saying that as long as the MOU existed, it would have been legal for B Systems to be accessing you and me, our data, on the voters' register.
On the terms as contained in the MOU.
In the MOU. As long as there was a properly constituted agreement, then it would have been legal for them to access that information without your permission. I think we have some difficulty hearing you.
The law says that data without my permission, right? Whether it's legal or not, the law is against that, right? So the EC cannot give access to my data to a third party who is also selling it to a financial institution for a financial gain, and I will just be there and say my privacy hasn't been breached. Then anybody can go and collect anybody's data and sell it to a third party, and they claim they have an MOU with those people, and then they have the legal right to use your data. It's against the law. It's that simple. These system guys have access to the EC's database, so their API queries the database to authenticate your ID card, and the bank see visual copies of the ID card. It's not just a yes or no. Because if I said my ID number is 123, it's not going to say the ID number 123 is valid. It's going to associate the various data sets, my name, my location, my face, right? And then the biometric data that goes with that particular number. So that's what the system does. So it's not like, okay, they are going to authenticate an ID number. It is against the law. And we should even be asking the MP if it's even the law that EC must generate internal revenue from selling voters' data. It's also not in the law. So why are they doing it even in the first place? If when maybe in the US or the UK, the commissioners should be queried by now. Data Commission should be talking to us and apologizing or telling us the next step in ensuring that those people involved are punished, or the legal processes they are taking to make sure our data is not compromised. You cannot sell my data to a third party for whatever legitimate means if I don't have I've not given the outright permission as the law states. So it is wrong, and it's wrong.
This seems a fundamental, the fundamental bone of contention here. That's one law, the Data Protection Act, says that you need my permission before you pass it on to a third party. But your suggestion here is that just because you have a legal agreement with this third party, you can now give them my data without my permission.
No, you see, the law says that for a lawful purpose.
Yes, but...
hold on, for a lawful purpose. All that the law seeks to frown upon is where you don't put structures in place so that the data falls into wrong hands. All right? So, for instance, if you look at the work NIA is doing, the people who are collecting the data now and managing it is margins. All right? It's margins. And so when it is done, what is margins going to do with the data? They'll have to now hand it over to NIA. And NIA, what is the NIA going to do with the data? The NIA is going to host the data. So if I am a financial institution, and I think that the data as collected by NIA is far more advanced, far more comprehensive than that of the Electoral Commission, I can approach the NIA to have a form of an agreement so that I can have access to the data for a lawful purpose.
But the law says the NIA needs my permission.
Hold on. Yeah, so there's a need for synchronization. If you marry the Data Protection Act to the contents of the EC establishment law, there will be a dichotomy. If you look at the law establishing the National Identification Authority, if you look at the content, they have the right to do some of these things within legitimate means.
Let's clarify this.
You understand me?
I want to read from the Data Protection
Exactly.
Act. And I believe what I'm reading is under Article 20.
No, clause.
Clause 20,
Section.
Thank you. Section 20, thank you very much.
Yes.
All right, 21 says, a person shall not process personal data without the prior consent of the data subject, which would be you and I in this case, unless the purpose for which the personal data is processed is A, necessary for the purpose of a contract to which the data subject is a party. That's
go further.
Okay. B, authorized or required by law. So authorized or required by law.
EC law or NIA law.
All right. C, to protect a legitimate interest of the data subject. That's me. D, necessary for the proper performance of a statutory duty. Or E, necessary to pursue the legitimate interest of the data controller or a third party to whom the data is supplied.
Thank you.
That is very interesting.
Exactly.
So
it gives exceptions.
Now, E is a very interesting exception. Yeah. Because, in essence, E kind of makes nonsense of the rest of the law.
And read E again for the hearing of my brother.
This is one of the exceptions. Yes. Okay. It says that. So let me read it with the actual section.
We call it the controlling clause.
So a person shall not process personal data without the prior consent of the data subject unless the purpose for which the personal data is processed is, and then I jump to E, necessary to pursue the legitimate interest of the data controller or a third party to whom the data is supplied.
Exactly, supplied. Go to D. Go to D.
D also says necessary for the proper performance of a statutory duty.
And hold on. And what is the statutory duty that is required of the banks? The BOG, the Bank of Ghana law, now says that you must verify the identity of every person who is an account holder. That is a statutory duty. And how can they perform that?
So now here's the question. Yeah. In order for this to apply, you know that when, that's why, for example, when Google is setting up on your phone, it has these terms and conditions, and you must tick to accept.
Yes, I
agree to these terms. So as a person who has a choice of either putting my data on the electoral roll or not, I must be given this information and told that if I tick this box, I am agreeing that my data can be used in this way. So that if I don't want my data to be given to any bank, I can choose not to put my name on the voters register so that my data does not become available under this law.
Now, that would mean, but what about if you insist? You insist on realizing your constitutional right of participating in the electoral process because you are of 18 years, you are a Ghanaian, and you have sound mind.
Yes, so it's a choice.
It's a choice. You cannot say it's a choice. Now you are saying that you want to assert your constitutional right. Yeah. So you must participate in the process. And the Electoral Commission is saying, before you are allowed to participate in the process, I must collect your biometric data. Yeah. And you are saying that because of this law, okay, because I don't want to grant you access, to grant you the permission to be able to use my data in this manner, irrespective of the exceptions, exceptions granted therein, I won't register biometrically with you, and yet I must insist on my constitutional right to vote. You can be denied.
But you see, that is a conversation that would only arise if you are informing me, as the law expects you to.
I agree.
You see, so that's the point I'm making here. That you are not informing voters that this is how their data will be used.
No, this is how their data possibly could be used.
Yeah, exactly. So you are not informing them.
So the education, the focus, the pendulum must now swing from the Electoral Commission to the NCCE.
But by not informing them, you've breached the law and violated their rights, have you not?
Is it truly that we are not informed? Can we really say that?
Well, that was my first question to you this morning.
Is it truly that we are not informed?
Before you registered, that your data can be used in this way?
I don't recall.
And were you given the option?
No, I don't recall. I don't recall. And I also know that it's not being done now. So I can agree with you to that extent that the registration officers, at the time of collecting the biometric data of registered voters, or even the prospective registered voters that is ongoing now, to that extent, then it amounts to a dereliction of duty. but it cannot be an unlawful process.
Right.
It's only a dereliction of duty. We are derelict from our lawful duty that you need to inform the person. The law doesn't say so,
right,
expressly, but it implies that you need to inform the person at the time of collecting his data, right, that pursuant to section so and so and so of the Data Protection Act, your data, when eventually collected biometrically, the EC has the power to put the data to so and so and so's use. All right. Now, the other question which you asked is that EC may elect not to inform you at the point of collecting the data, but it is mandatory for them to inform you when they want to put the data to this use, which also they don't do. I don't recall seeing any public announcement prior to the execution of this MOU with B systems. So there too, I can smell a breach of the law, an implied breach. All right.
Interesting, interesting. Now, of course, there is the auditing aspect of this that we must also touch on. Let me just quickly say thank you to Maximus for contributing to the aspect that regarded the data protection. We appreciate your time indeed. But now let's talk about the audit breach, which the Auditor General's report captured. Worrisome, because again we are looking at procurement breaches where there doesn't appear to be a proper what's the
follow-up of the procedures.
Right. We don't have a service level agreement, which the law says we must have.
Since about October 2016.
Yes, and this is what would have established the basis upon which you can even charge them this 20% commission, which
or
appears to be
upwards.
Indeed. And that doesn't exist. So from an audit point of view, where somebody has left us extremely exposed, and yet has been making our data accessible to this organization
electronically.
In terms of Parliament oversight here, now that this is part of an auditor's report, what are the immediate steps, and are we looking at someone having perhaps caused financial loss to the state?
Yes, the difficulty is that the EC is a constitutional body, so their oversight comes, and it's the special committee, special budget committee. They have direct oversight over some of these constitutional bodies, and it is revealing that since about October, or since about late 2016, there's no properly valid form of agreement.
Even the MOU.
Yes, it has been suspended. So you see why they can suspend it, because that is not a contract qua contract. You don't suspend contract. The circumstances under which a contract can be rescinded, can be reviewed and all, are contained in the contract itself. So because it's an MOU, one party can decide to suspend it. And the report also doesn't reveal that BCC came back to EC to question why you have suspended the contract. Now, the troubling aspect is that they continue to earn revenue with the hosting of this data, and the purpose for which they are hosting data, they continue to earn revenue without remitting the requisite amount due the Electoral Commission. So what are the remediable steps available to us? Now, we can charge interest on whatever is with them since October 2016 till now. There should be penal sanctions. Alternatively, what it means is that by conduct, even though the MOU has been suspended, by conduct of the two parties, there is an agreement. All right? Agreement cannot necessarily be reduced into writing. We have parole agreements. But this is a conduct of the parties ex post facto, the fact that an existing MOU has been suspended. And it is worrisome that such quantum of monies are involved. And yet we don't have an existing agreement. We are only we only regard the relationship as a result of our conduct.
Right.
Because EC hasn't taken any further steps to stop B systems from hosting the data, and B system too hasn't approached EC to say that we want a review or want to reconsider your position on the matter. They are all living as if life must go on. And so, as a people, we need to look at some of these things. Now, the Auditor General is recommending an immediate release of that money.
Yeah.
Okay, to the Electoral Commission. Electoral Commission just came to us with a huge budget to undertake this limited registration exercise. Meanwhile, you have money sitting with a private entity. You understand my point? And so we need to be careful as a people.
Right.
And there are plethora of these things in the Auditor General's report.
In fact, you've made the point that leads me right to the next thing, because it appears even Parliament has been implicated in one of these
and
anomalies.
We can look at that.
Yes, and I want to read from this the same report, the special report, paragraph 267 onwards, and it says, and I quote, "We noted, to the contrary of the legislation referred to above, that between August and December 2017, the authority made payments to the tune of 192,400 Ghana cedis, described as honorarium, courtesies, and protocols." I'm reading from paragraph 267 of the report. Okay, so honorarium, courtesies, and protocols. That's how they've listed it in their accounting. Special and sitting allowances to all the members and supporting staff of parliamentary select committees on trade, industry and tourism, finance, and the Women's Caucus in Parliament. Ironically, management could not justify these payments. And by the way, this is management of Ghana Export Promotion Authority, okay? That's the body that was being audited. Paragraph 268. Our review further disclosed that the committee members did not sign the claim sheets to acknowledge receipt of the monies purportedly paid to them. We also found the activities for which payments were made, including working visits to the authority by committee members, courtesies and protocols before Parliament went on recess, special allowances to organize special programs, and sitting allowances for meetings, untenable. Transaction details are provided in the table below, and it's got the breakdown of which committee got what. So Finance and Administrative Committee got honorarium.
No, there's nothing like finance.
Sorry. This is, forgive me, I was reading the wrong paragraph. Parliamentary Select Committee on on a working visit to GEPA.
Okay.
Were given an honorarium of 12,400 cedis. The payees did not sign. Parliament Select Committee on working visit to GEPA again. This is Trade and Industry and Tourism Committee. 54,000 Ghana cedis. Nobody signed for it. There's more. 30,000 cedis, which was also before Parliament went on recess. 30,000 cedis paid to the Trade, Industry and Tourism committees, and then the Women's Caucus. It's all here. So, yeah, in essence, payments to your colleagues.
Indeed, I'm a friend to the Trade, Tourism and Industry Committee. Now, it's shocking, and you see how internally they couch the narrative. What is honorarium? What is protocol? As a friend to the committee, when government intends to sponsor a bill and is trade related, it will be referred to the trade committee. And the ministry decides which of its sub-agencies should sponsor that bill. And by sponsoring the bill, you don't need the whole of Parliament to work on it. That's why it's referred to the committee, the select committee in question. So recently we worked on the Ghana Standards Authority bill. Okay, and I was part of the retreat that really went through the bill with with hundreds of amendments. So we referred it back to them to redraft and bring it so that when you get to plenary, the work is faster. And I'm part of the winnowing committee as well in Parliament. Now, if the Trade Ministry says that, well, I am inviting all members of the committee to say an outpost. So let's say Eastern Premier Hotel in Koforidua for a weekend, so that you can concentrate on working on this bill for me. I don't pay my hotel bills. I don't pay for the meals you give me. But if you don't craft your narrative like this and you say it's amount of honorarium,
okay, I mean, I think I
have a difficulty.
I'm sorry.
Let me wind up.
Right.
I don't know what the Women Caucus did for the ministry to assist them. If it is a donation, say so expressly, and don't seek to bastardize the whole of the parliamentary institution in this manner.
But is the Women's Caucus supposed to be receiving donations from the executive?
You know, maybe for an activity they must have done. And that's why they said the Women Caucus, they write for assistance.
I'm confused. The Women's Caucus is made up of MPs who are all paid to do a job.
No.
They're all paid to do a job. So why should the executive be making donations to them?
You are wrong. When they are undertaking some community outreach, to talk to young girls, to go out, they look for support. Right. In terms of fuel and all that, they look for support. That one I must be honest with you. So if a ministry decides to support them, all right, I think it should be properly couched. That is why, for instance, you can't say.
But I think you are guessing now that is what it was.
Yes, because the
that's
narrative,
not what the audit says.
No, but the narrative is so
you are
nebulous.
seeking to sort of clean it up.
Yeah, no, I'm not cleaning it up.
Because you
I'm
have
only
no
saying,
way of knowing that's what it is.
Perhaps it didn't happen. Somebody sitting internally is doing this in the name of the parliamentary system.
Which is a fair point because there were no signatures.
Exactly. So these are matters we can interrogate.
Right. I'm told that our time is completely up, but this is something that can only be at its beginning in terms of discussion.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for your time with us. Roxy Nelson, Defiamapo from South Day, a member of Parliament for that constituency. He's also a member of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee, as well as the Judiciary Committee and the Winnowing Committee, as we just learned today. Right, now it's Thursday, and as usual, we have a health-based conversation today. We're going to talk about headaches. How do you deal with yours? Join us as we engage our resident doctor, Dr. Joseph Akama, on this and all related issues. Mamabi is going to speak to him right after a quick recap of what we learned last week.